Hello, I'm Tom Coon. I'm Vice President of Agricultural Programs at Oklahoma State University, and I'm pleased to share with you today my unique perspectives on the impact that land-grant universities have had on American agriculture and rural America. The land-grant university system is uniquely American. It was established in the mid-19th century through the passage of the Morrill Act of 1862, also called the Land Grant Act. There have been successive legislative pieces that have been passed since then that have helped to build this. But what it was at the beginning is far different from what it is today. And I think that's one of the key messages about the land-grant university system, is that it is responsive to and evolutionary to the changes going on in society, both locally, in the communities, as well as in our national economy. So first, let me talk about at the beginning. In 1862, when the Morrill Act was passed, the vision at that time was that we could revolutionize economic development in rural America by providing education, higher education, for the children of farmers, ranchers, and the working class. At that time, higher education was really inaccessible. It was only available to the wealthy. It was only offered through private institutions. And the land-grant university system turned that around and said, let's create universities for the public good and equip people throughout society with the skills they need in order to help drive economic development and innovation. So that was 1862. A number of states took advantage of that and established their land-grant institutions. And then by 1887, it was clear that we needed to do something more than just provide higher education. We also needed to take advantage of the discoveries that were happening in research. The scientific research really was changing the way we understood the natural world and really beginning to change the way we understood our own society. And so in 1887, Congress passed the Hatch Act, and at that act, they established a partnership between the federal government and the state governments in order to promote research, particularly related to agriculture. At that point, what the land-grant universities do became heavily based on evidence. What is the evidence for changes in the practices that we might apply on a farm? What is the basic scientific understanding of what's going on inside the plant, inside the animals, or in the environment that supports them? And so that was a really important innovation in the land-grant university system, bringing research to bear on those things that were facing, presenting challenges to people across America. As we went along, as science progressed, we gained more and more understanding. It became clear that educating students in the university was not sufficient, that we were discovering so much so quickly that we really needed to find a way to speed up that translation process, helping people in their everyday lives understand the research findings and how they could apply those to improve their own circumstances, perhaps to improve their agricultural productivity, or perhaps to improve their safety, or perhaps to improve the environment that they depend upon for their production practices. And so that led in 1914 to the passage of the Smith-Lever Act that established the Cooperative Extension Service. It's a unique system. Many nations have agricultural extension. Only in the United States is that extension delivered by a university. In all other cases, it's delivered by a ministry or department of agriculture, which is fine, but it makes it a bureaucracy, as opposed to being linked in with the actual source of new understandings, the research that was going on at land-grant universities. And that really became then the three-part mission of land-grant universities. Teaching, the academic programs that we had at the start, research to help understand the natural world better and to understand what we can be doing in agriculture to improve performance, to improve productivity, profitability, safety, and so on. And then translating that out so that people could put that information to work on their farm, on their ranch, in their food processing factory, or in their home and in their community. And so it was that triumvirate, if you will, or triangle that was formed at that point that persists today. Now throughout that, the land-grant system has been very adaptive. It has been evolutionary. So in addition to bringing in these other mission areas, one of the things that it has responded to is the fact that we had a divided society. In 1862, the Land Grant Act that was passed made education available only to men. At that time, public education was not coeducational. That didn't come until later. In 1890, Congress passed an amendment to the Morrill Act, the 1890 Morrill Act, that established an opportunity for states to have land-grant institutions to serve African American populations. Now, this was at a time that our society was highly segregated. It was primarily in the southern states where this happened. And today we still have 19 1890 land-grant institutions that serve historically black populations. That was a way of dealing with the segregation that we had at the time, and yet bringing to bear on African American communities the opportunities that the land-grant mission presents to people, their families, and their communities. In 1994, that model was modified further with the passage of the 1994 amendments to the Morrill Act that established an opportunity to create tribal colleges in the land-grant system. There's an interesting circularity there, because if you go back to the land grant concept of 1862, those institutions, the states were incentivized to establish their land grant institution by the federal government offering them land as capital to base that institution on. Whose land was that? It was land that had been taken. It was land that had been taken from Native people. By 1994, we begin the reconciliation process. It's by no means finished, but it begins that reconciliation process, and it does it by bringing back to tribal communities the opportunity for improvement, for improving their life circumstances, improving their agricultural productivity, improving their communities through the application of this three-part mission. And so today, that reconciliation continues as we build partnerships between those three different sets of land-grant institutions, the 1862, the 1890, and the 1994 institutions. And so those partnerships really are key, I think, to addressing some of those societal challenges that we've had in the past through segregation, through mistreatment of different peoples. But it also models another aspect of the land-grant system, and that is that we depend on partnerships. It is a collaboration. And so it begins with the federal government, state government, county government, collaborating on providing this service through the county extension offices and through the support of agricultural research, through the agricultural experiment stations. It begins with that, but then it's expanded by having partnerships between the land-grant institutions and the private industry and non-government organizations that support agriculture or community development. But there's a key, very strong linkage there between the industry that we serve and the access to that research and extension programming that we depend upon. How do we measure the impact of the land-grant university system? It's kind of overwhelming to think about that. But if you look back and reflect on the history of American agriculture over the last 100 to 150 years, think about the changes that have been made with respect to the crops that we grow, the characteristics of those crops, the improvements that we've made, the understanding of the genetics that has helped us to make those improvements. Think about the research that's been done on the physiology of insects or plants or livestock species, and how we've been able to use that physiology, that understanding of physiology, to improve our protection of crops, to develop tools that we can use to avoid having pests overwhelm our crops, or perhaps pass diseases from one animal to another. We've just made tremendous inroads with that kind of understanding. And so today, for example, in the dairy industry, we're producing more milk with a fraction of the number of cows simply by improving the genetics, improving nutrition, improving the reproductive process, and improving the way we handle the product that we extract from milk, so from the cows. So there are many examples like that where you can look at the improvements in agriculture and in the food industry and in natural resource management, and those are a consequence of the research that's been done at land-grant universities in partnership with other governments and in partnership with industry, and then the translation of that research into practice through the Cooperative Extension Service. One of the most striking data points that I find useful is the vast majority of PhD degrees that have been granted in American universities over the last 100 years are from land-grant institutions. So we continue to invest in the future of the United States by investing in, first of all, education that can help to equip people with a better understanding and ways of solving the challenges that we're facing. And then driving that through research that really undergirds our opportunities to innovate in agriculture, in food, in natural resources, and then having access to that, making it available to people across the nation. Those are still the strong tenets of the land-grant university system. And because it has been evolutionary, because it is adaptive and responsive in that way, I think it's something that's going to continue to play a key role in the United States, in our agriculture certainly, in our rural communities as well, but also I think it has a tremendous role to play in urban communities. It has a tremendous role to play in helping us to improve the way we manage our own health and the health of the animals that we depend upon. Ultimately, the land-grant university system will remain the single most impactful investment in American agriculture, food, and natural resources because it is accessible, adaptive, responsive, evidence-based, and collaborative. It is a uniquely American construct that has helped to strengthen the integrity of our human, food, and natural resources.